the ER for today, September 20th, 2010. Starting with general business. Anyone in public would like to address the board on an item not on the agenda? Seeing no one, I'll close that portion. Bring it back to the approval of the minutes of ABR of September 7th, 2010. Do I have a motion to open those minutes?
So moved.
So first by Keith, second by Clay. Starting with any item before item 1. No? Item 1. Okay. The only question I wanted to ask: did we, at the time, in the motion, or try to get in the motion that we wanted them to resolve the traffic issue too, which was the parking issue, or did we just ask that they?
This is what I remember.
Okay. All right. So all those in favor of the minutes as reviewed, say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. Okay. Let's go to ABR consent of September 13th, 2010 minutes. I have 2 September 7th here. What's this one? Sign committee.
Mr. Chair, I'll make a motion to approve the minutes of ABR consent September 13th, 2010.
Okay. Do we have those minutes, Tony?
Yes, Mr. Chair. Let me read you the consent calendar for last week, September 13th. We had item A, 2222 Bath Street was postponed 1 week.
Sorry, Tony. Do I have a second for that motion?
I'll second.
So Chris is second. Okay, we have first and second. Okay. Sorry, Tony. Go ahead.
So 2222 Bath Street was postponed 1 week, and item B, 614 East Haley Street was postponed 1 week. And consent, Clay Orell and Chris Gilliland attended consent last week. There wasn't anything actually reviewed. Both items were postponed, but they were here.
Okay. So I think all those in favor of those minutes say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. Let's have some minutes to open the September 30th consent. First by Clay, second by Gary.
Okay, consent calendar today, September 20th. We had item A, 604 Santa Barbara Street was continued 1 week. Item B, 2222 Bath Street was continued 1 week. Item C, 614 East Haley Street got a final approval with a condition. Item D, 431 Vista de la Playa got final approval as submitted. Consent today was reviewed by Clay Orell and Chris Gilliland.
Thanks. All those in favor of those minutes say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. A motion to open September 7th sign committee consent.
Mr. Chair, we
don't have.
Well, Dawn Sherry attended the sign committee review 2 weeks ago, but she wasn't here today.
Okay.
She'll be absent from this meeting too, in fact.
Okay. So you want to postpone that?
So the sign committee postponed their minutes. So we'll postpone ratifying the minutes here. Postpone that 2 weeks.
Very well.
Do we need a motion for that?
Do we need a motion to postpone the?
I guess so.
So
we can do that.
Do we have? Gary will first motion. Clay second the motion to ratify postponing the ratification of the minutes of the sign committee consent of September 7th, 2010. Okay. All those in favor say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Against? Motion carries. Okay, that brings us to item D, listing of the approved conforming signs from September 14th, 2010.
And there again, we postponed that also for 2 weeks.
Okay.
Because I was going to report, I was going to read the conforming signs into the minutes of the sign committee, so that all that's postponed 2 weeks.
Okay. Do I need a separate motion for that? Okay. All right. So item E, announcements, request for applicants for continuances and withdrawals, future agenda items. Anybody not going to be here? Or?
Mr. Chair, I'll be absent on Monday's consent calendar, the 27th, and I believe Paul Zink will be standing in for me.
Abstaining. Okay. All right, Clay.
And then I believe, Gary, you're going to be doing consent come October,
Yeah,
right? If we're still...
Okay. That brings us to. You have any, Tony? Announcement?
Yes. Well, Don Sherry will be absent today. And we received an appeal for an ABR approval for 903 West Mission Street.
Okay.
That will be at City Council October the 19th. So either today or next meeting, we should get an ABR representative to go to that City Council hearing on the 19th.
19th of October.
Mr. Chair,
Yep.
I'll volunteer to represent at that meeting.
Okay. Thanks, Keith. West Mission Street.
Okay, and also staff will be going to the ordinance committee to revise the sign ordinance and also update the sign review process. You know, we're doing this sort of consent calendar now for signs, so that'll get updated or presented to the ordinance committee on October the 12th. And that's just for your information in case you want to follow that or attend that meeting.
October 12th. Okay. I update for signs.
And that's all I have for announcements.
Okay. Thanks. Brings us a subcommittee report. Do we have any? I don't think we have.
Well, we do have this item on the agenda for the reformation of the Highway 101 Joint Subcommittee. That's a joint subcommittee of the Planning Commission and the ABR. I suppose we could do that later in the meeting. I could call Jaime or Betty to see if they want to talk about that.
It might be good to take it off the bat because I think seeing from what's here, I don't know what the timing is going to be like. But
Okay.
just see if they want to do it now. If not, we could postpone it till after.
Mr. Chair, Jaime Lamone's on his way.
Okay.
He'll be here in a minute.
Great, thanks. Go ahead.
Sure.
Yep.
Yeah, I just wanted to give you, the board, a little bit more explanation on the specific request. The SBCAG would like to meet with folks on the ABR and the Planning Commission to discuss some future improvements regarding the high occupancy vehicle lane. They have a proposal now that would make some additional changes after these operational improvements are made. And I think we disbanded that subcommittee thinking that we were complete with that project, but there's more discussions that are primarily focused on ABR's purview through the corridor there. That we are asking the Historic Landmarks Commission to have one rep as well as the Planning Commission, so we just wanted to revisit who was appointed previously. Maybe that person wants to continue. I don't know if Chris, were you on that? Or
I think Mark was on it.
maybe
at
may
one
not have
time,
been
yeah.
Mark.
I think
Been
Mark
that
was
long.
on. Yeah.
So those of you that might be interested, we would like to probably have one or two members, ideally a landscape person.
Landscape person.
Yeah. Also-
Of the group that we have,
The large selection we do have.
of this large selection. Okay.
So I think within the next 2 weeks, we'll probably would have a meeting set up.
Okay, I'll be on that then.
I'll volunteer as well.
Okay. So Chris and I. Okay, that's it, Amy? Okay, so that brings us to the end of general business, and we can start with the item 1, 401.5 Old Coast Highway. Hey, Gil.
Doesn't look as bright as that.
Thanks, Tony.
Doesn't look as bright as that. Not on? Oh, there it's on, okay.
We're not putting up the no drawings. Oh. I'll just go ahead and read where we left off then.
Okay.
With the motion continued indefinitely to full board with the comment for the applicant to resolve all easement issues and return with site survey clearly identifying all easements shown on the plans with an explanation of their purpose and use. Okay. Here we have
Mr. Chair, members of the board. My name is Scott Vincent. I'm an assistant city attorney, and I was asked to come here today to explain the purview of the ABR with respect to easement rights, property rights in general. The ABR's task is to review the design and improvement of properties. The city itself is not the arbiter of real property interests. What we have here, I believe, at a fundamental level, are two adjacent property owners that are currently experiencing a difference of opinion as to what an easement between two predecessors of theirs entitles one property owner or the other to do on their respective properties. The city regularly reviews documents such as these for conformance with, in order to achieve conformance with various zoning requirements and so forth. In this case, the city has historically approved the development on these two parcels based on this easement. What has changed is, over time, one of the successors to that easement believes that the easement entitles them to a different use of the property than from what I understand, it has been historically occurring. And that dispute is and will be resolved in a different, it won't be resolved by the city. The city is not the arbiter of property rights. Whatever decision the city came up with, the party that is aggrieved by that decision would need to go or could go to the Superior Court and ask the court for that opinion. And ultimately, a Superior Court is, or the court system, is the proper place for that disagreement to be resolved. With that understanding, my advice to the ABR is that you hear the presentation of the applicant, review the presentation by the applicant, assuming that they have the rights necessary to achieve their application. The applicant needs to understand that they are proceeding at their own risk. If at some point a court determines that they don't have the real property interests necessary to achieve their application, regardless of whether the ABR approves the application or not, their efforts in reliance of their interpretation of the easement will have been at their own risk. Likewise, if the adjacent property owners are concerned that the proposed application is aggrieving their property interests on their own property or on the easement, then their recourse is to maintain the status quo as they understand it, is to ask a court for injunctive relief stopping this application. But in either of those situations, again, the ABR is not the proper body to be resolving that real property, the underlying real property interests. The court system needs to resolve that. If the parties can come to a private agreement and resolve the difference between them, great. I think that would probably be more efficient for everybody. But to the degree that they're unsuccessful at that, the court system will be the party that resolves their real property interests. The city is not that body.
Mr. Chair. Yes. Mr. Vincent, I have a couple questions based on what you said. First one being that I don't think that ABR has any intention to resolve an easement dispute between parties. I don't think that's ever been our purview or desires, to be honest. Sure. Second, we are required to review projects based on them conforming with the zoning ordinance, from what I understand. And staff does their job to make sure that projects do that before they come to us. We've actually looked at a project that is proposing 6 parking spaces that do not meet the parking standards of the city of Santa Barbara, easement or no easement. They don't meet the minimum dimensional requirements. So in our last review of this project, it was confusing for us whose land is what and what easements are where. But the point being is I think we have a project here where we're being asked to give an approval to something that doesn't conform with the city zoning ordinance, and I don't think we have that purview either.
Mr. Chair and Board Member Arel, sorry. Primarily my comments were directed towards the board's prior condition of the continuance, that the parties resolve the real property interests before they come back to the board for a project or for an action on the project. If, as the applicant presents their real property interest, the design does not meet the zoning requirements, then that is a proper subject for the board to comment on and ask for a positive resolution of. But that's with the applicant making their presentation within their understanding of their property rights. And if that answers that question, I mean, if the application says we own or have the use of this land, and even within that explanation they can't meet the zoning requirements, then they either need to be looking at a parking design waiver or a modification of the parking requirement if that's what's necessary.
Yeah. Mr. Benson, I believe that was the impetus for our last comments, was to try to understand better what we are to look at and approve based on the presentation given by the applicant. Because as a board, we all sat here, majority of us. Gary wasn't here and Chris wasn't here. But sat here and we're trying to figure out how the parking would work on this property because it didn't have the required minimum dimensions. And there was a lot of discussion about easements and things that were confusing to us, so we were looking for clarification. I agree we're not here to discuss easements and provide any determination on whose easement is what. I definitely agree with your statement on that. Thank you for the clarification.
I'll be here, and if there are questions, I'll hope to help clarify them. But again, yeah.
I have a question, Mr. Vincent. Just in understanding what you stated, so if I think I got you correct, what you're saying is that if we review this based on the applicant's their thinking of their use of that easement is, and we review that, we have the same requirement to review a project that may come from, say, the neighbor who has a different view of the same easement that would submit an application using the easement in a different way at the very next meeting, say, if that came up. And we would then review that one as though, based on their knowledge and use of that easement. And we would have to review that also and go forward as if that were the correct use of that easement.
That is correct, and I understand the obvious conflict that arises from that particular circumstance, where you have two properties proceeding with conflicting uses of the easement. What I would say to that is that the city's job or the city's role in the review of development is to apply the city's zoning and design standards to the real property interests that an applicant presents to us. The noticing process associated with our design review process informs neighboring property owners of applications that may affect their property interests. If one of these applicants were to find that the other application was inconsistent with their understanding of their property interests, as I said before, their recourse is to seek a preliminary injunction from the court telling the city to maintain the status quo until the real property interest can be resolved.
Okay.
Otherwise, for the city to act unilaterally on either one of those applications, saying we will accept this application or we won't accept that application, then the city has, in effect, picked sides within that status quo. Right now, the parties need to step up and say, this needs to stop. Or they need to come to their own private resolution, which is always, I think in general, a preferred response. And I think that that's what you typically see coming before the board, is even when there are disagreements about real property, somehow the neighbors work it out. If that's not possible, though, then really that injunctive relief is that the city will follow whatever order a court provides us with.
Okay. And can I ask another question? Is that if we were to proceed based on what they feel is consistent with their knowledge of it, and it has built structures on this easement, and we were to give an approval, say we went along and we gave an approval down the line, and then there was some action later that showed that the way that they were using the easement is not to be, whether by case of law, cases brought against each other, whatever. Does that then nullify, or does that the approval that we gave, is that then null and void because of that? Or do they then still have an approval that they can use? And the reason why I'm asking that is that in a case like this, if there are things happening on the easement that are critical to reach a threshold level for us to make findings to be able to give approval, then what if that piece of structure that was built on that goes away? Then we now have given approval on something and we have lost that threshold that we were supposed to have met to be able to give approval.
It's difficult for me to answer hypotheticals in every. Your hypothetical assumed a lot of different information. Couple different responses to it. One is, I don't believe we're talking about a hypothetical to the point where we have a building that is set in an easement that speaks to vehicular access. That's a different situation. I think we are still speaking about an easement that talks about a particular piece of land being used for vehicles, and that it's within that realm. The question is, whose vehicles get to use it? So I don't think we're quite at that point where we're talking about one party putting a building onto a piece of land that is vehicles only. But I would expect.
We do have a structure that is going to be in that area. They're actually building something other than using it for a vehicle, and who's of a vehicle, it doesn't matter. But there is a proposal here that has structures that are to be built on that disputed easement that is not just a space for parking.
Okay, I would have to see that.
It's right here and right here.
Okay. to finish up my answer to the question, one of the expectations or one thing that would come out of or I would expect out of a resolution of the property interests, that whatever court order would come out of such a dispute, if it got that far, would be a direction from the court to the city as to how to interpret the easement, how to apply the rule in a manner that is consistent with the rights accorded by the easement. I don't expect the court to get to a point where it would tell the ABR how to exercise your discretion regarding the appropriateness of the design or the aesthetic qualities of the project. But I could anticipate a court saying a building can be here and a building cannot be there. That I would expect that the court would get to that level of specificity regarding the interpretation of the easement. And factually, I'd like to hear what the presentation is regarding the buildings that are set in the easement before I even comment on that. I don't know enough about that part of the application.
Okay. Any other questions on the board? Before we... Okay. All right. So with that, we'd let the applicant proceed with their presentation.
Okay, my name is Gil Garcia.
Yeah.
I have Everett Woody, Tony Fisher, representing the client. And just to start from scratch here, we have 3 existing buildings on this property, 2 of which are residences currently occupied, 1 of which was a commercial building at one time, empty at this moment, and being converted to a residence. We have received, that's unit number 2 on the plans, in case you're looking at it. We have received modifications to live within the setbacks of that 10-foot setback at the rear. We are taking that back building and taking the 6-foot setback, cutting it back from the property line, giving it a 6-foot setback. Most of the improvements, of course, are going to be inside this. There are proposed exterior improvements that are not buildings per se, but open space, garden space that's being proposed in the paving area for 2 reasons. One of them is to enhance the living opportunities or conditions of the existing residents that are there, not so much for the one that we're doing because it has its own living space in front of it, but more to enhance the living opportunities for the existing residents that are in place. We have a carport that we are proposing to put in the paving area. We have 2 poles that are in probably the disputed 12 feet. We could, I guess, take those 2 poles and move them back and cantilever the carport over so that it, with a big bracket, so that it, those 2 poles are not in there. Those are probably the only structure that might be in the disputed area. In any event, we're here, that you know what we're doing, what the city council looked at and what they approved, with the idea of keeping the building in the back that we're working on as a residence and upgrading the quality of life of the other 2 residences. There's very little architectural being done as far as the buildings themselves are involved. The 1 new wall that we're putting in where we have cut back with a few windows, a porch in the front to give it more of a cottage entry, similar to kind of emulate the architecture of the building in front. And relocating the waste receptacles outside of setbacks and make them more within the setbacks. I mean, outside the setbacks, I should say. So we have the landscape architect that probably would like to present the landscape portion of it, and there is a colored rendering here, one that might be easier to work with. You want to come over here since this is, I guess, where the television sees it.
you have the landscape plan? Yeah, if you don't mind. Oh, I can just use it. Ricardo Castellanos, the office of Katie O'Reilly Rogers, Landscape Architects. The landscaping is relatively straightforward. We have shrubs along the driveway just to soften the entrance here. As you lead up, we have the waste receptacles, and we have it screened from view. In the carport that was being discussed, we have vines growing up and over on the eaves. We have these on both sides of the parking spaces. We have canopy trees and planting, and we also have enhanced paving going into the existing buildings, which are the new entrances, as well as on the one that's going to be converted into a residence. Each one has their private little spaces and yards in here in the front and on the sides. And then we have a large buffer of planting canopy trees along this side here. In the back, we have room for just a couple of trees, canopy trees, large canopy trees, adjacent to the units. And then again, more enhanced paving over by Unit 3 for that entrance, a little private yard with surrounding border landscaping as well. Then if you look at the elevation, the south elevation with the landscaping, you'll see the carport with the vines, the canopy trees in the front. Again, vines on the carport over on the second set of parking spaces. And then the screen shrubs in front of where it would be the trash enclosure. So it would really soften as you're looking from the entrance of the property. And then, of course, the color rendering, just to give you an idea of what's enhanced paving, what's new landscape. So any questions?
Just to complete my presentation, I could use this perhaps here, maybe to say that the original building in the rear was a flat roof. It'll remain the flat roof building. It currently has a pitched roof on it that was put in without a permit, so that's coming off. So it'll go back to its original design of what it used to be for many, many years. The carport will be in the character of the building in front, more the cottage feel to it. And really nothing being done to that building, Unit 3. And the fencing, you can see the type of fencing we're proposing for screening and new vines. So that then completes my presentation. If I have any questions.
Okay, can you...
The elevations?
I think that it hasn't changed since the last time you
No.
presented it.
No.
So I'd like to bring it back to the board for questions. Keith? Oh, public comment. Yeah. We have 2 public comment slips. Silvio Guadagnini, followed by Estachio Guadagnini. And Silvio, would you like to come forward? And
My name is Silvio Guadagnini. As I said last time, I live at 407 Old Coast Highway. My parents owned 405 and 407 Old Coast Highway. I'm not in favor of this development here. I don't like the trees, excuse me, that are, if I'm reading this right, I think this is our property, and there'll be canopy trees on this side. I'm not in favor of that. On the other side, we have bamboo that we're constantly taking out of the gutters. We have to go up there all the time and clean it up. I don't want to do the canopy trees on the other side now. It's very perilous to go up about a 20-foot ladder and have someone holding it from the bottom while you have to clean out your gutters. I just don't see how it fits in. All this stuff crammed in all around me, all around our property. So once again, I'm against that. I know Mr. Garcia's trying to do a good job. I like the little light wells he's doing and things like that, but some of this stuff just doesn't work in that area there. There's no one else that has in that area, be it Westmont College's apartments behind me or the people to the left of me. No one has anything so dense and compact as this, and I just don't see how it would fit in with the area. So since I can't talk about the parking or anything else, we'll leave it at that. Okay.
thanks. So Estachio, followed by David Munoz.
My name is Ustaki Guadagnini, and I own the property owner at 405 and 407 Old Coast Highway. I was just looking at some of these plans right now. Forgot what your name was? Ricardo? Ustaki. Gusto. Okay. Where are you going to put those trees? The back of the property is right against Westmount College. Where do I see trees up there? Okay, this is the back, right?
Yes, yes.
How are you going to put trees?
You see it in the light well here, and inside another there's a solid wall there. It's just on the other side of the solid wall.
So on
here.
the inside.
It's the inside of the property, yes.
So isn't that going to cause a lot of problem with those trees if they grow up on top of your roof, your flat roof?
Well, it depends on what type of trees, but
Okay.
which that hasn't been selected, but that's the proposal.
That is a concern to me because kids can smoke and throw cigarettes up there, and who's going to be cleaning up all the flat roof? There's no way of leaves leaving that. Then also the wind, if everything blows on my side. So I really am concerned about a lot of trees here. We do like some sun.
Okay.
And so that's one concern. The other is where your patio areas. May I see them here that you're showing me? You're going to have a section where people are going to be sitting outside at night or in the afternoon or evening to socialize or congregate. So that's. But you're going to have a patio area?
Yes, we are. We have I'll talk about the ones basically adjacent to you.
Right.
We have the private patio living space for the unit in the back, and we have for the 3 units, gathering place here.
So all 3 units will be gathering right against my property.
They have the potential to do that, yes.
You're darn right they do. And I have a feeling because of the past, I know what goes on, and I have a little problem with that. Once you move it on the other side, where there's nobody living on the other side, except you have your single unit there, but you don't have anybody in the evening to bother because you have a hospital, pet hospital in the front end. The other side is nothing. This side is it's 5 feet or whatever it is. You can be 5 feet from the property, and I know you try to do your job, and I don't have anything against Mr. Pritchard, but I do. In the past, I've had a lot of problems with the rentals, So, and I can see it when this project is done. You people are gone, but I'm still living there, and I can't be calling you and say, got all these problems constantly. And I think there will be a problem if you know what I'm talking about. Mm-hmm. And you seem like you're saying yes.
I don't know. I can't tell you if there's going to be a problem. I say that if there's a problem, of course, you should probably get the owner's number and call him right away immediately. And I think that this is going to be a new structure and new landscaping. I think that there will be a lot more structure to whoever's living there as to and a little more quality of life feeling and more pride of ownership and more pride of living. Yeah.
It's just not, it would be nice if we could say that, which you cannot do it, but anyway, that only the people can be using this, or only the people that live there, because there can be herds of people coming in, especially with the proposal, what they're asking for. Right now it's just great. Like I said, we owned that whole property at one time. We built, Melchiorti Construction built the warehouse, and and I lived there for 20-some years in the back. And we had one single residence. Then after we sold, other people built that other section there, whatever. But it seems like everything is coming on the east side. And some of the problems, I've lived here 60 years in Santa Barbara. And I've seen how it changes. And you probably lived here quite a while, unless you were born here. 71. Congratulations. I mean, what you almost the same.
Okay.
But I've seen a lot of difference. Anyway, I'm not really for the total thing. And also the trees, I'd really like to know if you're going to have the height of them and what kind of trees you're going to plant. Okay. I don't want no tipuanas or pine trees and all of these other things. Anyway, thank you very much.
Thank you. Dave Munoz, followed by Angie Munoz.
Board, my name is David Munoz, and I have the property at 401 Old Coast Highway. And aside from any easement issues on it, there is still the one determining factor that he only has usage of our side of 401 Old Coast Highway for 12 hours. My understanding is that you should have 24-hour usage of anything you're going to be using. So that's my concern. One comment I would like to make, and it's more for the sake of those that move into that property. In lieu of what happened on August 24th, 2010 this year at the corner of State Street and 154, where unfortunately that rig ran into the back of that house. I have a concern for the back wall of his property being cinder block, and we know in the 50s cinder block was not filled with concrete, very hollow. I took some pictures earlier that just where a baseball went through the cinder block. Cars have bumped up into the cinder block. Maybe not at this point, but at some point to consider a solid concrete wall in that back area rather than the cinder block wall that is there. Thank you.
You're talking about here?
The backside to where we at?
Well, your property. Your
Yeah, so he's
property.
back here, yes.
Yeah.
Mhm, yeah.
Okay.
I don't know if you care to see, but, that's the type of damage, that little things would do.
Okay. Could you quickly, just before you leave, explain what that 12-hour, 24-hour? I wasn't clear on that.
I wasn't either until 3 years ago, apparently, but we've both understood it to be differently for the last 30 years. That he has the ability to park on our side.
On this side.
Yes. In the way it is written is we have daylight, not any usage of hours in the terminology. Daylight, we can park on our side. And apparently, his attorney has interpreted that nighttime they can park on their side.
They can.
I'm sorry, on our side.
I guess.
Yeah.
Okay. So, Angie Munoz.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the board. My name is Angie Munoz, and I'm one of the owners of 401 Old Coast Highway. I have a different concern here. The proposal, the landscaping is beautiful, but one of the issues that I have a concern with is drainage. It has been a problem in the past with his tenants that in the past have used the proposed patio area for Unit 2. They've housed dogs there, and the tenants have not used the correct disposal of dog feces and have washed the feces down into our parking lot. And so when we'd come in the mornings, there would be water and dog feces sitting right here as we got out of cars. So it is a concern of mine that I know with the wonderful landscaping they're proposing, there's also going to be water that'll be needed to help maintain that landscaping. And I have a concern for the drainage of it, that it drains properly and not to sit onto our property and ruin and add to the possible ruin of the asphalt that sits on our property parking lot. Right now, his current tenants have on occasion washed their cars, and water does sit at the very corner of our back parking lot. And I know in the probably not too near future we'll have a problem with the asphalt starting to deteriorate right at this corner over there. So that is my concern for today.
Okay. Thanks very much. Okay, with that, I'll close the public comment and bring it back to the board for questions. Tony,
Chair, we received a public comment letter from Paula Westbury.
Okay. Thanks very much. Bring back Keith.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Can we look at the site plan again, please? And is it correct that this area of the adjacent property is used for parking? Is that this area here? What's its use?
I'm not that versed on the easement issues.
Not asking about
No.
easement. I'm just asking what's the physical use. Is it used as parking?
Well, right now, yeah, there are parking.
Do we have anything that shows the layout of that parking lot?
Not in our plan. I think there might be.
Okay, so we don't have like a dimensions layout.
This is a record that's been in the city that we saw, where there's 12 parking spaces total.
Okay, but nothing with dimensions.
No.
And do we have anything that shows the adjacent property owners, the neighbors that are here, where their buildings are located relative to your property?
We don't have that. Do we have that?
I don't think so.
No, we don't have that.
Thank you.
We have an aerial, I think, that we might have submitted with the pictures.
Thanks very much, Keith.
Yeah.
Gary?
Didn't get an opportunity to really review it, but it is the same one that we looked at last time. Am I understanding that there is fencing right here?
Yes.
And then there's also fencing. Is that fencing coming to this point right here? This is still asphalt? Is that correct?
That's correct.
And then the structure comes out to this point right here. And does the roof overhang a little bit farther than that, or
2 feet?
2 foot overhang from that. And in this area right here, we're on questions, right? This area right here, this is this neighbor's outdoor living space?
Yes.
Okay. All right. That's all the questions I have.
Thanks, Gary. Chris?
I had a couple of the same questions. Wondering what is adjacent, where the buildings are adjacent to this site. I'd like to see that on the next plan, hopefully. Have you talked with the city at all about the SWMP requirements for drainage and that sort of? Yeah, so I'm curious also about the drainage situation. But those are my only questions, though.
Thanks a lot. Clay?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. A couple questions. Gary, you were asking about this area. This line right here is the setback, correct?
Yes.
So this structure is inside the setback?
Yes. No, the fence is.
This fence is in the setback?
Yes.
And how tall is that fence?
6 feet.
Okay. My next question is for staff. I'm curious to know what the minimum dimension is that you need to have for parking that goes from front of that space to this building that they would have to comply with for backing out and turning. Can we get the answer to that question?
Mr. Chair, that's a question for the transportation planning staff. Our planning staff doesn't have an answer for that. I know there are a lot of variables, the width of the spaces, etc. That's not a simple one number answer. It depends on the plan and the configuration of the parking.
We don't know with transportation.
Can somebody get the parking standards that the city supplies applicants to see if the applicant has actually complied with that requirement?
All I can say is that the Transportation Department has reviewed this and has approved it.
Who reviewed it in transportation?
Yes.
Who?
Transportation.
Who?
I don't remember her name.
Okay. Can we get somebody down here that may have reviewed that?
Well, another point, as I understand it, the footprint of the building and setback encroachments have already been decided by the City Council on appeal. So I don't think we're talking about that.
If I recall correctly, and I could be wrong, I think that the resolution that I read at the last meeting said that City Council only had one thing, that this project, that we would review this project, but the one thing that they wanted to make sure that it was contingent upon is that parking, transportation would be sorted out. And that was the one issue in the, if I recall correctly, in reading the resolution, that was not something that City Council actually made a determination on, that they said that that was an item that had to be sorted out. It was contingent on that.
No, they said it was a civil matter.
A civil matter.
Yeah.
Yes.
So that's the parking between the two parties.
Yes.
But what about parking with the guidelines, within the city's guidelines?
Well,
Transportation's
this was
guidelines.
approved by the Transportation Department. Evidently, they didn't take into consideration parking here because it's a civil matter.
Mr. Chair.
I see we have the project planner in the audience, and perhaps she could come up and address the parking and the transportation review of the project.
Could you give a Roxanne, can you give this?
Here, Roxanne, just sit here.
This is perfect. Mr. Chair, members of the board, yes, the parking layout dimensions has been reviewed and given tentative approval through the transportation planning staff. So that is not up for review at this time. The parking as they proposed on this plan does work.
It does work.
Yes, it does.
Okay.
It's tight in that we understood that.
Okay.
But
And
the
that's
parking,
not taken into account if there is parking here, is that right? That's
again, that issue is a part of that parking easement that still needs to be resolved.
But your finding was that it's okay the way it is here,
Yes.
and you didn't consider that there was any parking there at the moment.
Transportation staff was at the parking situation on site, and the determination was made that the project could proceed with the 6 spaces as being proposed.
Right. So that would, I don't want to keep beating this, but that would mean that the applicant's understanding of this easement is that they have full use of this easement to use anytime. That would have to be, in other words, they would have to be able to use this at any time. If your finding is that this parking is okay and to get in here, it would mean that this owner has use of this easement at any time.
That is correct, Mr. Chair. We understand.
And actually the applicant should really say that's their understanding of this easement. I'm not trying to make a determination on the easement. I'm just trying to understand how the decisions were made so that I could have a better understanding of the whole, what's going on.
We understand that the parking spaces, in order to use them, would require access over the adjacent property. Yes.
Good. That's thanks, Rox. Okay. Did I ask Clay? And so, with that, then I'd bring it back to comments from Keith.
Putting all the easement issues aside, I don't really see any changes to this project since the board unanimously denied it previously. I know the city council approved it for this number of units in this configuration. My take on that hearing was that it was mainly because of the proposed residents and their status as far as providing affordable housing. In my mind, that just seems to set up a two-tier system, that we have one set of standards for the general population and another set for economically disadvantaged folks. So again, this project's the same as what we denied before, and I really have a difficult time supporting it.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm going to agree with my colleague that I feel that the project is not a quality project. There are certain things where we have outdoor living space and windows of one unit directly behind some trash going into the outdoor living space of another unit. The garage, the proposed carport, really cantilevers out quite a bit into the into what could be the neighbors' access in order to get their vehicles in and out. And I see the same thing with the proposed fencing, that may impinge on someone else's rights to an easement. So looking at this project, I don't see how it works, and I really do think that the quality of life for this Unit 2, of how the light gets there and how the access happens, and these extra doors that are going through other units, outdoor living area, there's some quality things on this project that doesn't sit well with me, so I'm not really in support of it.
Thanks, Barry. Chris?
This is the first time I've seen this, so all those easement issues I'm not really up to speed on. But from a landscape perspective, what I'm looking at is what some of the neighbors brought up, and that's these. Just throw this up there. The trees on in the north area of the property here and along the east. I'm just worried about, if those are large canopy trees, they're going to be stealing sunlight from this neighbor here, and also large canopy tree here will take a lot of light from this neighbor. So that's a parking lot? Yes. Okay, so it would be nice to have what the adjacent land uses are on the plan for next time, so that I knew that. So then I guess I'll retract that statement on the north side. But these here, there is a neighbor over here, though.
That's correct. Apartment building.
So I'm worried about these trees. This is, west, so the sun is going to be coming over here. We're going to be taking some sunlight from that area. Other than that, I think the plan looks good. I'm also wondering what's happening here, because it might be an opportunity to get some You're shaking your head.
Well, the property line.
Right.
The parking lot. I
There's a
think.
building lot and parking lot on the other side of that.
Okay.
So, that was on the aerials, and it's, you know, there've been so many attempts at presentations in the past.
Right. Okay, as I
It's
said,
really
this,
unfortunate none of you have done a site visit. That's,
I have.
okay, then you could have clarified for them.
No, it should be on
the
your
plans.
application.
Okay, so I'll just be curious to see what the drainage situation is also, and whether or not you'll be required to do SWMP calcs. That's it. Thanks.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I have done a site visit to this property. I went to the lot behind, which is the parking lot. I went to the lot to the northwest. I drove up the driveway. I parked in the parking lot for the tenant that's in front, that faces now the other one. Sorry, the building of the neighbor. Saw a mix of cars and people parked and sitting in cars, and kind of backed in, backed out. It was really tight, but I've been to the site. I think I agree a lot with what Keith said about this project, just from a design review standpoint. I think that it's our purview, absolutely, to make sure that we're providing quality design and making sure that people are doing appropriate projects in the city of Santa Barbara. And I think that this is a case where we have an enforcement issue that came up. And the slap on the wrist, unfortunately, has been you've been able to get through certain things and modifications that we may not have supported in the beginning. But barring those things, having the building in the setback, allowing 3 units, okay, fine, I'll go down that road. However, I'm not about to go down that road and allow a substandard building be put back on this site that has serious problems for the livability of these units and will be relegated to multiple families in multiple units, causing issues for the neighbors and whatnot. This is not, from a design and architecture standpoint, this project is not working. The trash by the windows in Unit 1, the fact that there's only one bathroom for Unit 2, and a separate entrance potentially causing a 4th unit on the site. I think all those things are problems. The lack of natural light, those are all things that we talked about on day 1 when you requested a denial. I still think that they all hold true, whether you got the mods or not, or the ability to use 3 units. I think you, as the applicant, Gil, have an obligation to put forth a good project, and I don't think you're doing it. And I apologize if that's stern, but we're seeing the same thing over and over again, and we keep asking for information, and we keep getting the same set of drawings. So I can't support the project from an aesthetic standpoint, from a design review board standpoint, irregardless of mods, unit count, HUD, Section 8, easements, or potential disagreements between neighbors. Just looking at what the application has before me, I can't do it. I can't support it.
Can we respond?
Thanks, Clay. Just a short one. I still have to go. Go ahead.
Okay, well, maybe you didn't listen to the first submittal or the first presentation, but we were attempting to do a quality... Oh, well, I don't think that you can talk to me that way, but I can't talk to you that way. Is that it? You take learning lessons when you go to architectural board review? Let's talk about sensibly then. I won't talk to you that way, but maybe seriously, maybe you did not listen to when I presented the project the first time, and that's a possibility. Okay, I give you the benefit of the doubt that you may have, and maybe you didn't understand it. We put in the light well. There's plenty of light in here, plus we have a ton of skylights in here, operable skylights for good ventilation. Now you know that in green buildings, skylights are utilized for plenty of light coming into a building, and in this case, they're ventilation. We have plenty of windows on this side, so I think all of this has windows. Now we presented this to the city council. They approved it. So I really don't think you have the purview to tell me what goes inside this building at this point. Now, you may think you do, but I don't think you do. So I would like to hear from you, seriously, is the items outside that you think that you would want to make this building acceptable to you. Nothing to do with the inside. I think I've done a good job here. You may disagree.
Well, here's the thing, Gil.
People can disagree.
It's fine, and we may not ever agree. Okay? You're not giving us enough information. If you think that there's light and appropriate light in there, then show it to us. Give it to us. And whether you showed it at the first hearing or not, it's not in this set of drawings. And all that I can review today is what I'm looking at now. I think the trash, you asked me to be specific, but I think the trash outside of that bedroom of Unit 1 is problematic. And having that public space outside of those bedrooms is potentially problematic.
Okay, we can deal with that.
I think that there's some other issues, but we'll disagree on design.
Okay. We're really talking about exterior design at this point, and I think you make a good point on the trash, and we can certainly respond to that. What we're looking for now is this aesthetic. We never really, I don't feel I've gotten real aesthetic comments, and that's really what I'm looking for now, so that I can try to respond to them.
Okay. So, I have to tell you that I agree with my board members, and there's one item that I'd like to talk about that just came out in that discussion with you and Clay, is that the fact that you say that since City Council approved this project, that we don't have the purview to say what can and cannot be put in the buildings. I am wondering if that is really the case. And as we sit here deliberating on this project as a ABR, what is our authority if we do not have that right? And I'd like to find out from staff if they could help me out here.
Submit, Mr. Chair, yes. The City Council approved change of use to the portion of the building in the rear yard setback, and to allow that conversion to not be separated from the smaller unit by the required 10 feet.
Right.
That is what got approved.
Right.
They specifically added at the end of their approval, but the project does need to go back to the Architectural Board of Review for its design.
Right. So architecturally, we still
That is correct.
have our job to do, right? Yeah. Okay. And they approved the number of units, so that have that number of
They
units.
didn't need to approve the number of units. That does comply with zoning.
Yeah.
It's the conversion, the shaded area that was in the rear yard setback
Yeah.
to allow its change of use.
And that
correct.
connection.
And then to not have the buildings connected and not provide the 10-foot separation.
Okay. Thank you.
Can I look at the guidelines that allows them to say what goes inside the unit? I mean, somebody has an opportunity to put whatever they want to put inside the unit and lay it out how they think it lays out the best, utilizing existing bathrooms that are located there.
Well, we've always had discussions on the livability of a project, and that's part of the living quality standards that we look at for buildings in general. So,
well, maybe Roxanne heard it differently, but I heard from City Council that they had approved the livability of it, that included a setback here and there, and that this was something that was a no-brainer, that people could live here in a good quality of life, and that's all I recall. And I thought that ABR's review, I spent 10 years on that side, so I have some idea, and I also went to Code of Conduct class to how we are the customer, and you are supposed to review our design, that you're supposed to respond to the aesthetic items that we're dealing with on the exterior. Never really got too much involved with the interiors, I recall, but maybe it's changed.
well, I'm not talking about dealing on the interior.
There was specific interior
Yeah.
comments.
Mhm.
We talked about exterior comments. We talked about doors and windows. We
Yeah.
talked about lighting. We talked about skylight, which is within our purview.
Yeah.
And if skylights are one of the things that we don't prefer to have on buildings. And that certainly is an aesthetic point of view. And the flat roof and how it goes in and how it looks is perceived, all of these items are well within the ABR's purview. fencing on the outside, how the landscaping goes, how the trees goes. Separation between the building is approved, but we still have purview of how the separation between the two buildings look.
Yeah. So I just want to wrap this up here. I mean, for me, I would say that I'm finding that, and especially with this drawing here, the type of parking that we have in the front, it's a big issue for me. This is it's a tight bordered site. There were conditions that the city council have approved that, and we'll go down that road. It's okay. The city council is fine with it. However, I'll have to say that some of those things that they have approved were there in the zoning requirements and stuff like that for a reason. And the reason that they had that because it allowed certain things. It allowed a sense of ability of a building to be able to breathe on its site in terms of space around it. Space away from each other. All of that lends to the type of space that is for someone to experience. And I think it's unfortunate that I think it's unfortunate because I think what it has is it's taking away the natural tools that the zoning regulations already had built in, and it has erased those, and so it has allowed the building or the buildings, a conglomeration of buildings, to have all those negatives in this project. And to overcome those negatives, there has to be a bunch of other positives to be able to bring this project back into a threshold that I feel is a quality project. And what I see in the front here, where is like the only ability that you really have to make that, it's so compacted, it's so congested. And I'll take away the fact that it's disputed. I'll take that away completely. But say that you had total ability to do this. These are so tight, so compressed. The areas to get into your units is always right through a car, or through the door space that the doors would open to get into the car. It's very marginal living conditions, which I think reinforces the quality of the type of living and the people that would end up being in a condition like this. And for me, I just find it's a threshold that I just cannot find myself being able to cross. It's not something that I feel that if I approved, I would be proud to be able to go and stand there and say that's something that we made better. I just can't find it in this application. Not that another application that you would make on it could not come back in and do it, but as it stands now, I just cannot find that.
Well, you're basically saying that this is the only place historically where parking has been since day one, since year one.
Agreed, and that may be the case, but it's not a good condition.
I agree. It's not a good condition.
Yeah.
I have to agree with you.
Yeah.
But it is the condition. It is what it is.
Gil, you're
What
adding
can I
another
do?
unit.
Huh?
No.
You're adding another unit.
Well, let's look at what would happen if we didn't add that unit. This would become a commercial building. You think you have problems now with adding a unit. Wait till this becomes a commercial building. You're going to have even a bigger problem. You wouldn't be proud of that, I don't think, having as much more intensity of a use than a small unit would. So I just think it's the best for the property, and that's what I'm trying to get is from you, is some direction from you as to what we can do. Your comments that we can probably come and respond to that are reasonable. Some we can't respond to. If that's the case, then you'd have to deny it, I guess, and have to go back to appeal again, I guess. I don't know what to do at this point, but the comments you've made, I don't know what to go from here. I've got a project approved from City Council that says it's got to go back to ABR for aesthetics issues. My impression was aesthetics issues was outside little items. That's what the direction I got. Now, it doesn't seem that that's what you think it is. So if you can't approve it,
I mean,
it is what it is, and let me know what I'm to do.
Clay?
Mr. Chair, to respond to what you're saying, Gil, looking at the elevations, there's flat roofs, there's really low pitched roof over what was probably the old garage. I guess it's now Unit 3. There's the hip roof, or the gable roof coming across the front coming across Unit 1. I think there's a mix of styles. There's a mix of roof planes. There's a mix of volumes. And if I just divorce myself from every bit of conversation we've had thus far and look at this newly, I look at the elevations and I go, we need to tighten them up. We need to get this building back to something that is cohesive, attractive from an aesthetic point of view. We have 3 different roofs, different pitches all over the place. In my mind, as an architect, I want to make sure that if we're going to do this building and we're going to make it look right, then let's make it look right. And part of my comment earlier is that this hasn't changed ever, and we're talking about it. And irregardless of all the other issues, I think that the carport sticking way out as a big eyebrow, and the little roof over the little Unit 3 and the little connector, those things aren't aesthetically pleasing to me. They don't work as a cohesive design for this property. And if we keep the light well the way it is and the windows where they are, and we clean this building up, we got to address some of the problems that this building has inherited over however many years it's been there. And I think you're doing a scale of work on this project, the whole back units being gutted except for the bathroom, the small units being nearly gutted except for a few pieces, and the front units staying pretty much intact based on your demo plans.
You say this unit's being gutted?
Well, no, it's not being gutted. It's just
there's nothing being done to this unit. There's really nothing being done to here except maybe putting the bathroom back into it. But I appreciate your comment.
I think we're at.
Because it's the first time I'm hearing some.
Well, no, I think you're at a scale. I think you're at a scale of this project that it deserves to be put back in a way that everybody's proud of. That everyone can look at and go, good, we took an old building tucked away behind an auto shop or whatever's up front, sorry if I misspoke, and we made it a better building. And right now, we're not making it a better building. We're putting a Band-Aid on it. And I think it warrants my biggest comment, besides all those other issues regarding the parking and easements, which we can't comment on. But my biggest issue with this building has been the design. It's been the aesthetics and the fact that we're not doing anything cohesive with the design. There's different window sizes all over the place. We're really not cleaning it up and making it a nice building that people will enjoy living in, and Mr. Pritchard will enjoy owning, and tenants will take care of it and respect it. And that I think is at the crux, at least for me, of where this project is. I'll let City Council tell me that I can't comment on an easement and that I have to give you your parking and your building and your 3 units or whatever. That's fine. I can abide by that. But aesthetically, I think we really need to look at this building as a 3-unit cohesive building and give it some architecture, give it some aesthetic quality to it. I don't think we can I can't sit here and ignore that. And that's been my biggest problem thus far, is that hasn't been addressed.
Yeah. And that's, I think that's one strong point that you say you're hearing.
I'm hearing now some design issues that I have not heard before. So I think that's important. One of them is perhaps a new roof. Maybe that's what you're saying. Perhaps elimination of this carport. I'd have to go back to staff on that. This could be removed or relocated. I can see that.
I think the issue Chris brought up of having to walk between the cars to get to the entries, that's an important, very important issue.
It's an important issue. Well, I'm trying to get the points. I'm trying to understand, so I'm trying to get the points.
And I'm trying to summarize that in a motion so that you can move forward. And I've been taking notes of all the various design comments. So, if I may, Mr. Chair?
Yes.
This would be an indefinite continuance back to full board with the following comments. Provide a site plan that indicates the adjacent properties, location of buildings, and use per the ABR submittal requirements. Study the location of the trash enclosure so that it doesn't have such a close proximity to the living units. study the layout and disposition of the open spaces so that they're more cohesive and less fragmented. Study the pedestrian circulation and access to the units to minimize conflicts with parking and access through parking areas. Study architectural treatment of the roofs and fenestration to unify the style and architectural expression of the elevations, and study the tree selections for the proposed property line trees.
Okay, do we have a second?
I'll second that motion.
Under discussion?
Under discussion, can we add something about I know you said something about the open spaces, but is there a way that we can add something about the doorway going through other private spaces? Is that something that
you're talking about circulation that's going through private space?
We have an additional door going out the back going into someone
It's an
else's.
existing door. Existing.
Yeah. Well, but it is an existing private outdoor living space. And now that you're proposing that this is a private outdoor living space, you have a door that goes into someone else's private outdoor living space.
This here is the private open space.
Or here, not here. This is circulation. Your private outdoor living space is here. But if you're really recommending...
What does this hatch mark
it's just
represent?
It represents green space. Open space. Yes. Green space.
A walkway.
Probably we should bring a plan that shows the exact location of the open spaces so that it's demarcated from this. Yeah.
Under try this. Study the privacy and screening of private outdoor open spaces from adjacent circulation.
Okay, under discussion, Keith, when you said that that complies with the architectural guidelines, one of those that I'd like to reinforce is that to have a visible, defined entry into these units. And I know that's going to be very difficult, but it's one of the things that I just cannot seem to be able to break in, that the public comes here and all they see is the bumpers of cars. And as much as you draw this picture for me and I see that, this gives you the feeling like there's grass in front or something like that. But what I cannot get to bring this building up to something that can be viewed by someone here in the public, that this is a quality building, is all I'm seeing is a tight parking lot. That's all I'm seeing. And if I could just get these defined openings that would have some sort of architectural feature to them or something like that, you would be halfway on your way to be able to make this project appealable from the public sensibility. And again, that's why in zoning they don't like you parking in your front yard, that sort of thing. And so that's one of the things I think that is greatly missing here, that would open this project to be able to view a little bit easier. But I don't know how you can add that in there, Keith.
Mr. Chair, I had attempted to touch upon that with the comments about study the disposition and location of the exterior open spaces. The idea being that perhaps there's some way to aggregate them into one larger area that might mitigate the visual impacts of parking.
Okay. All right.
I would agree
under discussion?
Under discussion. I'd agree that there should be some sort of comment in the minutes that we define an entryway to each unit, and I believe that Unit 3 does not have a defined entryway.
I think that's more added.
Okay, great. Okay, anything for under discussion? No? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries. One abstention and one against. Okay. Thank you. Next Thursday. Okay. Yeah, neither did I. I thought I'd be almost home already. I appreciate you coming out. Okay, so that brings us to the second item of the evening. 814 Orange Avenue.
Mr. Chair, for the record, my name is Justin Van Mullum. I'm with On Design Architects, and I do have a set of plans that doesn't have folds in it and has color. And those are same otherwise.
Okay.
I did add an aerial photograph to the plans just to help with the neighborhood questions.
Okay.
So start off. This is a interesting lot. The location, here's the train and highway. Basically, if Cannon Perdido and De La Guerra went through the highway, this would be the very next street.
Okay.
It's only 1 block long, so I didn't know the street before, but now it's kind of interesting because it has. This is a private alley. It's not a named street as it's shown on this vicinity map. It's just 20 feet wide, which gave us a lot of opportunity with that alley, which is located right here, and then Orange Avenue. And there's a nice retaining wall that's right here that's very low and has a little iron gate. Props the lot up about 1.5 feet, say, and then it drains to the back of the lot.
Okay.
So the first iteration when we looked at this lot, we were going to do a driveway coming in from this location and a driveway from this location. We worked with the transportation department to allow us to do the parking in the back and only have one curb cut. Move to the lot is only 45 feet wide, but it's 125 feet. Here's the site right here. Currently, the site is vacant. I guess there was a project the board may have seen, or maybe it was a single-family design review project, but there was a project that was going forward. They demolished the house and then got in a little financial trouble, and it's in escrow now, and we're making this proposal.
Okay.
So here's the site. There's the back alley. There's a lot of parking and garages that happen along that back alley. There's some two-story structures here. All of these numbers are two-story structures. I believe there's another one that we missed that's right here. We've tried to maximize our open space with our design, giving not only the required private yards, which is 10 foot by 16, but also larger spaces. And we've placed our windows so we'd be giving privacy in the area. So we've kind of decided if we did a fence kind of along this area right here, then you get these really nice open yards, and then there'd be no windows across here and no windows across here. I go to let me go back to the site plan just to talk about it. Actually, let's go to photos just so we can kind of see. This is the unit. It's an apartment structure that's right next door. You can see that's what we're looking at here. And then this is a craftsman style home that's on the other side. And there's the lot. Looking at it from the street, and then there's from the back.
Okay.
And here are some of the two-story structures that are kind of peppered around the neighborhood.
Okay, great.
So we have a couple design constraints we've got for some setbacks. Some of them that we've pushed the building up to, but given some relief on one side or the other. And then we've got our front yard setback. Then we're able to do 3 feet on the rear yard just with the parking structure and the parking, and on the 2 sides. And then we have a separation between the 2 buildings of, I think 5 feet is required. We gave 6. And then we have in between 2 habitable structures, we have a 15-foot requirement. That's what we've done here. Going to the floor plan. So the buildings are identical, so we have only one floor plan and elevations, but we're showing kind of what's happening on the site. And our plan was to create something that's affordable for families. This is obviously just for rental, and we wanted to give that separation, so that's why we have the 2 buildings and we have lots of open space. We have this bedroom downstairs has the possibility of being used as office or a second living room, depending on how the residents would like to use it. And we could put a door right here. That's one of the things that the owner has talked about, is potentially having a door here, so if it was turned into a space that was used by the whole family, like a den, that they would have the opportunity to kind of use the patio as well. And then we have the 3 bedrooms upstairs. And you can see here we've set the walls back slightly here and here in these 2 locations. We're trying to use quality materials for the elevations, things that, because this is a rental project, things that will age well. We've spent a little extra on the roof, and we're going with stucco. But what we're also trying to do is make this affordable to build. So some of the walls stack, where we have only one floor plan. This is by design because this is a hard neighborhood to get things to work out, to pencil out. So we're asking for a little bit of give and take here. We're trying to provide something that's much needed. It's on a vacant piece of land. It's in a neighborhood that has some rental units and has some families. We'd like to provide a rental product that is for families.
Okay.
That concludes my presentation.
Just
have
all right.
Questions?
Great. No, not yet. Public comment? Do you have any speaker slips?
I've never done this before, so I'm not sure where do I sign up for.
Would you like to come forward and speak and then fill out a speaker slip for Tony, which you'd normally fill out in advance, but come forward and speak.
Sorry.
That's all right. Come forward, and we don't have a lot of people, so you
This
can...
is my notice.
Okay. So
I'm
you can
Belinda
speak into
Oliveira.
mic. Yeah.
And I'm the property owner of 810 Orange Avenue, and that's right next door.
And is that to the north or the south? When you say next door, are
Right
you...
here.
Okay, you're the
I'm in the single-family
right
dwelling.
here. Okay.
And
Right here.
I'm not here to oppose the project. In fact, I like what I see. My only concern is the privacy between the properties. Right now, there is fencing down both sides of the property, and that was really my only concern, just for privacy.
To ensure that you have fencing along the side. That's what you'd like.
I'd like to see either the property owner prior to the current owner had a set of plans, and they actually had a block wall
Yes.
on their plans, and
Yes.
so I was coming to see to make sure that we still had some sort of
Fencing or
fencing.
a screen ability.
Yeah.
Right.
That was my main concern.
Anything that you could tell at this point, Justin?
We did have a chance to speak before the meeting, and I did let her know that I had forgotten the fencing on the plans, that we planned to do some type of dog ear cedar fence, and it could be at least 7 feet tall and a maximum of 8 feet tall as allowed by the city.
Currently, it's 6 feet in the back, and then it goes down to 4 feet in the front. If we can have 6 feet or 8 feet across the perimeter, that'd be great.
One of also the things we tried to do is minimize the number of windows that looked into both of the yards on either side on the second story.
Right, because of the second story looking down, we appreciate that very much.
Yeah.
And then just one, and this is just because I was listening to the hearing prior, there's proposal of 4 bedrooms per unit.
It's only 3 with a space that's allocated downstairs for a flex area where you
For a
could...
possible 4th bedroom.
Yeah, if you say that you are trying to age in place, you get to the point where you can't climb the stairs, that could be a fourth bedroom.
Okay. So, again, my concern with that would be that if there were 4 bedrooms in each unit and it was rented out to single people, let's say families don't occupy the house, that's 4 drivers with 4 cars for each unit. And this is just because we're so overpopulated already with vehicles in my neighborhood. It's a constant battle. So I just want to put that to thought here as far as the number of bedrooms and the number of parking spaces. That's a concern too.
Right.
Because presently we park on our own property, but everyone else parks in the alley and on the front street. And on street sweeping days, it gets very congested because they have to move their vehicles off of Orange Avenue into the alley.
Right.
So it's just something to consider.
Okay.
But other than that, I'm happy with the project.
Thanks very much.
Okay?
Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank you. Go ahead, Justin. Anything else? Oh.
I think that's...
Maybe you could just show us what, just go over the parking again, just to, you have your 2 parking spots and 2 here.
Yes, we have 2 parking spaces here, 2 parking spaces here, and then along this side of the alley, you have parking. And then you have parking on both sides of the street here.
No, people park right here on the edge.
Yes.
On here. Okay, and this is what's required for what you've got, right?
That's correct.
Okay.
Mr. Chair, do you mind if I start with questions so I need to go?
Yeah, go right ahead, Chris.
Mr. Chair?
Yep.
Just to finish up public comment, we have a letter in opposition from Paula Westbury.
Okay, thanks.
My questions are, I guess, in terms of the parking, the 2-car garage, does that mean one of the residents get one and one gets the other? Or how does that work?
We would probably do my thought was that these 2 spaces would go to this unit and this garage would go to this unit back here.
Okay.
That way, if there's ever something that happens, you hear your alarm go off, it's much easier for this unit to take care of the issue.
Mm-hmm. Okay. And then in terms of access, I'm kind of curious. Let's say this is their garage. They are basically walking alongside of
and that's why
their private yard.
There would be
minimal windows.
Right. The private yard is in this location for this unit, and there's a fence that goes across here. So there's minimal windows that, if you look in the floor plan, there's no windows up along this side, so you can walk through with complete privacy and get to your unit.
Okay. I think those are my questions. I'm just going to go right into my comments so I can go. And I like the configuration. I like the idea of creating nice, large open spaces for each unit. My major concern here is that we've taken out a lot of windows, and so the inside of these homes are going to be really dark. So I'm wondering if we could possibly do some kind of opaque glass or something as just to get some of that light in. And then I like the fact that we've actually eliminated the need for a driveway on both sides. So this is going to present itself as a little more, vegetated, which I think is good. And I think, without a full landscape plan, we'll look to see that next time. Then I can make additional comments, but that's what I have so far.
Thanks, Chris. Appreciate that.
Thank you.
Thank you. So, Keith, you want to go ahead?
No questions, Mr. Chair.
Yeah. Gary?
No, I don't have any questions.
Clay? Questions? Okay. Comments?
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yep.
I think the kind of mass, bulk, and scale and intensity that you're proposing here seems, very appropriate. Like Chris said, I like the rear-loaded automobile parking from the alley. That totally makes sense. And I can appreciate your moves towards affordability by design, and I applaud those. I think my main comments are just site planning in that, and I realize you're using the same plan for economy purposes probably, but you might consider the pedestrian circulation and access to the rear unit's entry, in that if I'm a guest and I'm coming off of Orange, I have to kind of wander back there. And I mean, it's almost like if this footprint was just repeated again, then you come up here and you see the entry, and you have a better kind of wayfinding and public face to this unit. It seems to be getting kind of lost. So that would be my main comment, is consider the orientation of that rear unit to provide a more clear pedestrian access from the street and a kind of presence towards the street. Architecturally, I think what you got going is fine. You might consider just a few simple moves here and there, maybe on some of the public faces, in the sense of just a kind of an intermediate scale element, like an awning here or there, something of that nature, just to add just one little level of additional scale. But other than that, I think the direction's fine. I understand that about the use of the fenestration for privacy. You might consider some additional fenestration on the upper floors in a manner that wouldn't impact the neighbor's privacy, and then in looking at the fenestration, perhaps just considering the kind of the noise impact of the freeway and the railroad, and so maybe it makes more sense to have fewer windows at on that side versus other sides. But anyway, I think it's looking like a nice little project.
Thanks, Keith. Gary?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. Pretty much similar comments. One thing about the entry is that it should be defined a little bit more, even if that means if we're going to enter it from the alleyway, that has a defined entry from that alleyway, similar to like they have in the Orange Avenue, or a more defined entry that leads to that unit. Maybe, although the site planning is, I think, really good, maybe if we can get some offsetting of these, that they're not in line, that there could be more of an entryway to the back unit, that you can see that there's a back unit there, might be a solution that could help us out a little bit. I see that there is some fluctuation in the sight lines. One of the thing that bothers me most is, even though we're concerned about privacy, is a lot of blank walls, and I really feel like that is not something that we should be doing. So I would look to see that we have some fenestration on these walls, whether they're high windows or as Keith mentioned, some awning details, or maybe even a different elevation in roof or something, that we can get some of these big blank walls. The kitchen doesn't appear to have any windows if we're looking at it from the second floor line here, or the first floor elevation, and I just think that it's really lacking in some light inside the building. So the mention about putting a doorway in this into this bedroom number 1, I think, is a good suggestion. That is something that we should probably look into, because that would give it the idea that its main use is not a bedroom, that it's possibly going to be an extra living area, but they could do that, so he suggested. But I think that would be a good suggestion. And just look forward to seeing more details. I think the size, bulk, and scale is great.
Yes, good comment, Gary. Clay?
Thanks, Mr. Chair. I think it's a good project. I think mass bulk and scale works. I definitely agree with studying the windows and studying the circulation. I think those are the two big issues here, but you're leaving lots of open yard area, and I think that I think I remember this project. It was pretty constrained with the previous design, but this has a lot of breathing room. I think it's a good start. Definitely.
Yeah. Thanks, Clay. Likewise, I think positively also. I think really good start, good design. It's simple. I think that what Gary was saying about the lighting, that's probably the biggest thing for me that I think that could improve it. And I think that the items, the circulation items that Keith brought up too, is also good. But overall, I think it's a really good project, really good direction right off the bat, very strong. mass bulk and scale is fine. So the other things that were brought up, I also agree with them. So. Okay, so I'm open for, and we look forward for landscaping when you come back, and that would show things like the fencing that between yourself and the neighbor, those kind of things. Okay, so we'd have a
2-week continuance, please.
2-week continuance.
Mr. Chair, take a stab at a motion.
Please.
So this would be full 2-week continuance back to full board with the following comments. The board appreciates the project's overall mass, bulk, and scale and architectural treatment. Applicant to return with a preliminary landscape plan that indicates the property line fencing and considers screening of the trash areas. Study the pedestrian circulation to from Orange Avenue to the rear unit and the street or public presence of that rear unit. Study adding additional fenestration to the project in a way that doesn't mitigate privacy concerns, and consider some selective use of some intermediate architectural elements for additional scale.
Nice. Second by Clay. Anything under discussion? No? All those in favor of the motion say aye. Aye. Against? Motion carries.
Thank you very much.
Good, Justin. And with that, I'd like to bring the ABR for today to a close. Good evening, Santa Barbara.